Hi, welcome to Floriculture, Floral Design at Home. My name is Amy Harrison, and today I thought I might present to you something very Australian, something dear to a lot of people's hearts. I got this in the post the other day, so I'm using this as my inspiration to create an Anzac Wreath. So very simple, hopefully with materials and ingredients you've got in your own home, garden / neighbour's garden or garden down the road. So I'm going to just be using actually as the base your regular old coat hanger. So I've got my coat hanger, I've got my scissors, some good cutting scissors for twine, and my red and white scissors to cut plant life. I'm going to be using some thicker green floristry wires to wire on some of my flowers. Speaking of which, I've got a huge bunch that my husband cut for me of rosemary. So rosemary is always featured in Anzac wreaths. It is, it actually helps you remember. Rosemary is a plant that provides you with memory, hence the remembrance of Anzac Day. So I think it's really good to have around if you're ever doing a test or something like that. Pop a little bit of rosemary in your shirt or behind your ear, and it might just encourage and stimulate those energies in your brain to help you recall things or remember things. So the wreath is going to be completely covered in rosemary, and then I thought for that Australiana feel, I'm going to be using Bottlebrush, which grows, I find, abundantly pretty much anywhere. I don't have poppies growing, which is the Anzac flower, but I actually wonder why. Well, I know why poppy is the Anzac flower, but I think you could use alternative flowers if you don't have poppies on hand, just for that hint of red. And might I add, with Bottlebrush, I've got my little lovely flower therapy book here. It's become kind of my Bible. But Bottlebrush, actually the energetic properties of Bottlebrush are increasing motivation, connecting to your passion, and a detoxification. So yeah, I think that's nice. A healing description: Bottlebrush helps locate the part of you that you feel is missing, but in truth you're perfectly whole. This flower reminds you to look to the true form of your being. I won't keep reading. It's a really good book to get if you're interested. And I've got also some little gum nuts, again keeping to that Australian theme. I've got some twine that I'll be wrapping the rosemary onto the coat hanger with, and I've got some nice little hessian or burlap roll that I'll just be creating a little ribbon with at the end, just to sort of finish it off. Now, first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to spray my Bottlebrush with some hairspray. Now, Bottlebrush tends to wilt. It's already wilting a little bit because of the rain that we've had. So I just feel like if I put a little bit of hairspray, those little bristles might stay intact a little bit better. They might. Again, I'm going to experiment. That's what it's all about. This has sort of fallen off already, so we are missing a lot of the Bottlebrush there. But we do what we can. And I might use this one that has a little bit more bristles or flowers. Give it a good spray. So I'm just going to use 3. 3 is a nice number to work with. I'll just put those off to the side. I've got already 3 gum nuts and I'm ready to rock. So I'll show you that the shape indicated for an Anzac wreath is a teardrop shape. So this one I created earlier, but I'll show you how to do this. So that's basically the shape that I'm going to be working with. So it's more rounded at the bottom and comes more to a point at the top. So you don't have to use any wire cutters or anything like that. Just simply get your coat hanger and start to push it at the sides. Whoop. Try not to hit yourself with it. Push it at the sides and just manipulate it into a bit better shape. Use your table, whatever you've got lying around. And that's basically it. Really quick and easy. I chose a coat hanger purely because it's already got a hook. So it means at the end of the day you don't have to make any sort of extra hook for this. So that's done. Then you want to pre-cut all your rosemary. So again, I'm very lucky to be able to get a whole bunch of rosemary that my husband cut off for me. Get your roll ready to go. I'm just going to place it on my lap. And then just start to grab any of your branches, maybe something a little bit longer to start off with, and you're going to start at the top, and you're just going to wind your rosemary around the wreath. So I only want to use a little bit of twine, but I might not even need to. So I'm just going to wrap a few bits first and see how I go. So maybe where you finish off, just go a little bit beyond that and start wrapping again. So we're just sort of layering at the moment. Obviously it's a silver colour coat hanger. That broke off, that's okay, we'll just chop that off. So we want to disguise the silvery part of it. You might be lucky and have some green coat hanger. Great, even better. So wrap it around. Now ideally you want to have the rosemary going sort of the same direction. So when you get to the middle, don't go anymore and start again at this side. So keep all the stems meeting in the middle section. It'll just have a better continuity and flow. So I am just going to put a little bit of twine here just to hold those pieces in place. Now again, I chose twine purely because it's something that you may have lying around. Twine, wool, cotton. The twine can be purchased from my wonderful floristry starter kit. The twine, the 2 pairs of scissors, the burlap, a whole bunch of different wires, some cold glue, some bullion silver wire, a couple of other things in there, just to get you started on your floristry journey. So I'm actually going to start now on this side, and I'm just going to do the same technique as wrapping around the bent coat hanger. Now the rosemary unfortunately will flake a little bit. There's not a whole lot you can do about that, but gosh, it smells amazing. So even just having this in your house I think would be beautiful. But I think the idea would be to hang it on your post box, on your front door, just leading up to Anzac Day. I think it'd be nice for people to see this sort of memory taking place. Since there's no parade this year, I have to support the diggers another way. Now this is a really big branch. I'm not sure how well it's going to wrap, we'll just see. Obviously the longer branches are a bit better because they'll wrap more. I might just have to trim that a little bit. Don't be afraid to use your scissors. Just be really mindful when you're working with them that, especially new ones, are really sharp. And to keep your scissors looking their best, it is really good to clean them at the end of each time that you work with them. And you can just use a scourer and a little bit of bleach and make sure you pat dry them afterwards because they do tend to rust. So I have in the past just thought, I'll just leave them out in the sun to dry, and unfortunately they rusted. So I've gone through many a pairs of scissors, but you want to just keep them clean and sharp. Okay, so we're getting there with the shape a little bit, and I don't, you can tuck these little wispy bits inside or you can leave them out. I love this particular rosemary because it's actually got a few little flowers growing on them. So it's so pretty. So what we're looking for is a balance of rosemary, so fairly even sides. So that again, you're just going to be twirling. Now, it's been raining really consistently here, so I'm outside with all the bugs and mosquitoes. Are probably attacking me as we speak. Okay, it's getting a little bit more even, but I can still see some of the wire of the coat hanger, so that's what I want to try and cover up. So the idea is you want to make it look as if it's been made specifically for Anzac Day. There is no coat hanger there in sight. No one needs to know how we make these things. You can use some of your smaller bits too now to entwine through. Oops, that one broke. So as the rosemary ages, it's going to get drier and have a tendency to snap. So when you're doing this, make sure you pick your rosemary on the day that you're going to make this, and it's nice and fresh, easy to manipulate. Traditionally these wreaths are done with laurel leaves, so if you do have laurel leaves growing in your garden, give that a go. I don't. Oops, that one broke again. Try and slip that in somewhere. So, you know, I mentioned I'm not really using much twine, but if you need to, that's fine. It's going to be reasonably invisible, but you will still see little bits of it. So I'm just going to put a little bit of twine here. Always cut the excess, because that's what's going to be really noticeable, is dangly bits of twine. Okay, maybe a little bit on this side. So it can be as thick or as thin as you like. Your creation. Let's see, how are we going? A little bit more thickness on this side. Now that I've got that bit of twine, I can actually thread the rosemary through there. Now this bottom area is where we're going to put the remaining flowers, so it's not as important to have that fully covered, but you may want to use your little bits to make sure that you cover that wire. A bit more twine. So it's Easter long weekend currently. It's Friday. It's a Good Friday, but the weather is pretty rainy and miserable. So I'm just trying to find things to keep myself entertained, and this is the best way I know how to work and be creative with nature. Playing with nature, I like to call it. So I might use that bit of twine again to thread this through and poke that in there. And it's actually covered quite a bit up the top as well, which is nice. Okay, a little bit more down the bottom. Again, just looking for roughly the same sort of thickness throughout the wreath shape. And one going this way, so it's nice to have all the rosemary going in the same direction, because it'll give a sense of flow and actually direction. So that's actually a element of design. So we still are featuring some design elements in this, because that's important. You still want it to be pleasing to the eye. Okay, so it's not going to be a completely perfect shape, but I'm still just looking for a little bit more of the same thickness going throughout. So it might be best to cut some thick shapes, some thinner shapes, some long, some short, a variety, which you probably will get if you are cutting from one bush. You're not going to get everything the exact same shape and size. Be very lucky if you did. Now, I've never actually made a wreath before from a coat hanger, so this is a bit of a learning curve for me too, but I never shy away from a challenge. Now I might just cut a little bit more of these smaller pieces up here and just sort of dig them in. So I'm turning it backwards and forwards, seeing it from all different angles. I can still see a little bit of wire right at the top here. So this should dry pretty beautifully, but the rosemary may still fall and flake. But I think if it's kept, you know, in a spot where it's not going to be hit by too much wind and rain, it should actually just crisp up. But eventually, like all things in nature, it will move on to somewhere else. Okay, a little bit more here. Probably should go the other way. Seems to want to climb up this little piece. So I'm basically just tucking it in. Oh, it doesn't want to tuck in. It just wants to pop out. Right? It's very stubborn. So a little bit of twine. So you could use even fishing wire because it is obviously a see-through material. So that would disguise any of your workmanship really well too. So I think that's about it for my coverage. I can't really see any more of the coat hanger except for the very top. If I feel the need, I may add some more rosemary at the end. Now, to decorate. So this is where you might need your stronger wires. So these are 20 gauge wire. So I'm just going to cut in thirds on my wires, and you won't need a very long stem with whatever stems you're using. So I'm going to cut that reasonably short. And then with a wire, I'm going to create basically a longer stem that I can manipulate. So I'm going to go roughly about half I'm going to place the stem about halfway where the wire is, bring down the two ends, and then wrap one end around the stem. And then it looks something like that. So do that for all of your ingredients. One more bottle brush, nice and short. Wrap around a couple of times. Okay, that's it there. So then my gum nuts, I am going to wire them individually, which means I need to cut them from their source, and once again cut my wires into threes. Same thing, turn it upside down, roughly about halfway, and then be really strong with this, going around a couple of times, like that. Two more. And the last one. Okay. So then pick a suitable spot, and also think about which way you prefer it to face. There might not be much of a muchness, but the flowers are only going to sit on one side, on the front or the back. So I think I'm going to deem this the front. Yes. And I would start with the bottle brush first. So I'll try and put this, I'll do a little bit and then I'll turn it around. So you're going to dig in your wires, and you may just wrap your wire around a little bit, but it's pretty sturdy. So I've basically stuck it in somewhere where there's obviously lots of branches, and then there's a little bit of extra wire that I wrapped back in onto itself, so it's a bit more sturdy. So maybe one going the other way. Again, same sort of technique. I'm just digging it in, and I can see the wire pop out the other side, and then I'm just going to wrap that wire back into all these stems, so it's actually got then some grip. So that's why you don't want wires that are too long. Okay, so I've got one bottle brush coming out this way, one sort of going back a little bit in that way, and I might actually have this one kicking back a little bit. So this I might be able to show you from a better angle. So that's sort of sitting roughly vertical, and I'm just going to peel back these wires and pop them back inside. Okay, so that's the bottle brush done. Then the gum nuts, there I'm going to roughly follow the same pattern that I just did. So I'm mimicking shapes here, I'm repeating positions, mimicking placements, should I say, of shapes, and then wire those back in and around. Same sort of one on this side. Try and avoid sitting them at exactly the same heights or levels. So see how this bottle brush is a bit longer, I've extended that gum nut a little bit more. This bottle brush is a bit shorter, I've made that gum nut a bit shorter too. Now again, this one is sitting back. I'm going to do a similar thing with this gum nut. Place it up and down, wedge it in, and look for the ends and pull them back into the branches. So there we go. It's not quite finished yet. So I can see the wires, which is why it's good to just have a few little stems of rosemary to finish off and cover any of your workmanship. So particularly where you maybe start to see some of your twine, just cover them up. It's pretty easy just to find some shorter stems and dig them in. You may have to do a bit of fiddling around. It's kind of like little surgical incisions here. Now I've got a big stem that's just sticking out there, so I'm just going to cut that off. And just anywhere where you see the wire, try and cover that up. I've also got my twine for the very end too. I don't have a lest we forget ribbon, unfortunately. But I'm just going to do something creative with the burlap, with the twine. The sort of it's basically hessian. They just call it burlap. Okay, a few more little pieces because actually the little rosemary looks quite nice, and it's very flexible. The little stems of rosemary, they're the newer shoots, so it's not as dry as the longer ones that have been hanging around a little bit longer, growing. Don't forget the bottom, that might show some of your workmanship. Some of those stems tend to break. Okay, this one's breaking a lot. Doesn't like where I'm trying to put it, I think that's why. Nope, don't want to use you. Okay, I think we're just about finished. I'll just put, well, that's a very curly little stem, so I've got to cut that so there's a straight part that I can insert. Okay, so last but not least, a little bit of hessian. Now traditionally you do have a little bit of a ribbon going across saying lest we forget, so you could do something creative and write on your hessian lest we forget, or you might be able to purchase a ribbon that already says that if you wanted to create that sort of look. For me personally, I'm just going to make a couple of little bows, maybe even smaller. So I'm just layering 2 loops on either side. I'm going to cut, and I'm going to just use a bit of wire. Again, probably cut even smaller. So I'm going to put the wire completely over the ribbon in the middle of the bow. Make a couple little twists, like you're twisting bread, those little bread ends. So then your wire sort of comes down below the ribbon, and the ribbon's sitting on top, or the bow's sitting on top. Then that can be inserted, once again, to cover some of your workmanship, some of those gaps. And if your wire, I'll just show you what that looks like. And if your wire is cut short enough, then you won't actually see any of your wires protruding. Hi! Okay, so I'm probably going to do 3 because I love the number 3. It's the magical number. And then I get to show you 3 times. So twist that, and one more. So that's going around, and you're twisting as high up as you can so the bow doesn't sort of come apart on you. So again, just look for those little gaps. You might be still following your placements that you made of your flowers. But it just, you know, it adds a nice little natural look. A few little bows can't hurt. And I mean, whether or not you wanted to cover the top, but I don't think the hook is that hideous and it can't really be seen. So I think that's it, and I'm really happy with that. That's my first Anzac wreath made from a coat hanger, and using everything that I've collected from my garden or neighbour's garden, with a few little additions of your burlap. So I hope you enjoyed that. Please share your photos if you're doing any creations, and any comments of anything that you'd like me to create, anything that you'd like to learn, please let me know. Have a wonderful day, and I look forward to hearing from you. Bye.